Greetings. I'm happy to be having this opportunity to speak in Hyderabad to your distinguished management school. And I wanted to talk about company leadership and responsibility. Now, I noticed that I'm going to first talk about the concept of leadership, of business leadership, in terms of a little American history. And we go back to a group called the robber barons. And that was very prominent people in the middle of 1800s who started to build businesses. Just like in India, you now have many new business people building new businesses. So in the case of the United States, we had people build steamship lines, railroads, steel manufacturing, banking, big oil company, Standard Oil, and Jay Gould, who was a Wall Street trader. All of them made a lot of money. So the role of success, the definition of success in business, of big success, was to become a billionaire. And I want to take a particular example, Andrew Carnegie, because his life illustrates some of the problems and some of the opportunities that billionaires have. Most of these billionaires made money by having monopolies and also paying the workers very low amounts of money. Carnegie paid only very low wages, and his workers worked for 12-hour shifts. And they were guarded by guards to make sure that they behaved. And there was a big fight between the workers who organized and the guards that the Carnegie hired to destroy the Union. So as a result, Carnegie became one of the richest men in the world. Now, when you have billions of dollars, what do? You either keep it for yourself and have your own mansions and swimming pools and so on. In the case of Carnegie, and this is an interesting illustration, he decided that he was getting old and he should do something with his money. And he normally would have given the money to colleges like your own, so that the colleges could recruit very good faculty and do a good job of training new leaders, new business leaders. But he decided instead that the real need was to have free libraries, because here you had so many people in the country who never read a book or couldn't buy a book, couldn't learn anything. But if you had free libraries, they can go to the library and end up developing some skills and become business people or doctors or lawyers or something like that. So it raises this question that Carnegie was a bad guy at the beginning and a very good guy at the end. He had built over 2,000 libraries throughout the world. Okay, now let's take the next situation, which is India. This is information from the Economist magazine, one of the latest editions. And in India today, believe it or not, there's 177 resident billionaires living in India, up from 100 in 2017. So is this good or bad news? In fact, there's other Indian billionaires, but they live abroad. And that's to their credit that they went abroad, maybe went to the United States, went to Europe, went to Asia, and also met some needs, because you don't become a billionaire without creating an industry that meets some needs. And the industries that are most prominent are some of the old industries that made the, the robber barons in the United States very successful. And I'm talking about petrochemicals and power plants and ports and telecom. And today, and news, and today in India, drug making, technology, software are some of the sources of the new wealth. And the new wealth is found in maybe 70 different cities in India, including Mumbai, Chennai, Hyderabad. So my feeling about this, and your feeling, maybe it will be the same, is that yes, these people are organizing your industries. They're putting industries on the map for India. That's what happened with us. If we didn't have some of those robber barons organizing the steel industry, the banking industry, and so on, we wouldn't have a head start. So we needed capital to be concentrated, in this case, in fewer hands, so the capital could keep looking for new opportunities and so on. So at the same time, we don't want the money to be made just on monopolies, because monopolies, they'll go on forever if you don't do anything. So let's see what we did. What we did is let me go back. We created a president, Theodore Roosevelt, who at that time chose to break up the monopolies. He broke up the big steel oil industry monopoly run by John Rockefeller. And the sign that we regard Theodore Roosevelt as one of our great presidents, and we've had some average presidents. We've had one or two poor, very poor presidents, but a decision was made to create the monuments of the four greatest US presidents. And that's at a place called Mount Rushmore. And here are the four: George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Thomas Jefferson, and Teddy Roosevelt. So notice how we've honored the ability of a president to regulate, break up the concentration of wealth when it was too excessive. And that may be a question for India. It's good that you're having successful billionaires. The question is it based on creating real value? And by the way, anyone who creates real value, that's what we do. We say in marketing, you're successful in marketing if you're creating real value that's meeting a need. So, but if you're gaining it because you are stopping competition, preventing others from also serving the same need, then we need a Teddy Roosevelt. I want to go back to this concept of what makes a great society of business people. And probably the person that should be really quoted is the father of modern management, Peter Drucker, because he had a view of business and how it should be performed for the good of the country. Notice his first remark: the corporation is in trouble because it is seen increasingly by more and more people as deeply at odds with basic needs and basic values of society and community. Question is, are the billionaires in India are meeting real needs of basic needs and following basic values of Indian society or not? And then Drucker goes on to say some great things about marketing, which in my mind makes him the grandfather of marketing. He's the father of modern management, but he's the grandfather of marketing. Here, look what he said. The business enterprise has two, and only two basic functions: marketing and innovation. Marketing and innovation produce results. All the rest are costs. In other words, accounting is a cost, production is a cost, human resources is a cost. But if a company is going to succeed, it will do two things well. But by the way, not just do one of those good things. If it only did good marketing, but never innovated, it will die. If it only innovated, but didn't know how to market the new product, it will die. So I think we can recognize how important it is for a company to be expert in marketing and in innovation. He went on to say the purpose of a company is to create, now most people say profits. Isn't it the purpose of a company to create profits? No, the purpose of a company is to create customers. Without them, there are no profits. The aim of marketing is to know and understand the customer so well the product or service fits the customer and sells itself. This led to another statement of his that the aim of marketing is to make selling unnecessary. Look, I thought he believed in marketing, and marketing is about selling, isn't it? No, he says marketing's aim truly is to make selling unnecessary. What he means is to be so good at innovation that you've created something people get in line to buy. They needed it. Why create things that are already made by 30 other manufacturers? Create something new, and you won't have to have any salesmen. You just have to have order takers taking the orders. The best way to predict the future is to create it. Wonderful way to think of the future, that we don't have to just adapt to a future, we can also influence its creation. Another remark: if the gods wanted to destroy you, they would give you 20 years of success. Now, I think of General Electric, one of our most successful companies in the world, run by one of our great leaders, namely Jack Welch. And yet, afterwards, General Electric, when he retired for some wrong decisions and so on, General Electric is now weak compared to how profitable it was. But let me go on. I want to go on to describe the roots of our global business thinking, because remember, this is about company leadership and responsibility. So a big influence on the way business people think about running a business was articulated by my own professor. My own professor at the University of Chicago was Milton Friedman. And Friedman believed that government is bad or evil. I'll quote, "I think the government solution to a problem is usually as bad as the problem and very often makes the problem worse." Now, sometimes it does happen. That is a true statement, but not universally true. It can happen. There's no such thing as a free lunch. So if the government gives away the people's tax money in the wrong way, it's creating a free lunch for some business people who are getting a lot of help from the government and not maybe deserving it. And he said that the trouble with the concentration of power is that it threatens freedom. It leads to authoritarianism or fascism. A society that puts equality before freedom is going to get neither. A society that puts freedom before equality will get a high degree of both. So he's for freedom more than equality. Now no one wants to believe that everyone should get the same amount of money. That is not the issue, but there's a quite big difference between the kind of grossly unequal income distribution and true equality, which we're not for. But he says, I am in favor of cutting taxes under any circumstances, whenever. I don't believe in taxes in the sense he's saying. Now that's kind of silly, isn't it? You got to have money to pay policemen and teachers and so on. So he saw capitalism as necessary for political freedom. Now, the reason I'm citing Milton Friedman is he's not only an impressive person, he went down to Chile when Chile was under a dictator, terrible dictator, and not growing at all. The economy was down and not moving. And he brought his team of economists. I could have been one of them, but I decided not to go down to Chile. And they fixed up Chile by bringing in his kind of economics, which is the free market economics. And it helped Chile. So as a result of all these things, all of our business schools and management schools adopted many of these ideas. Minimal government, maximize freedom, and it became what is called the new neoliberalism economy, neoliberalism. Okay, let me move on. Let's go back to Jack Welch, who was called the manager of the century. He was running General Electric 20 years. What were his beliefs? Because we have to know this, because I'm talking about company performance and leadership and responsibility. So Jack Welch said, my job is to develop the best people in the company. I'm a gardener, providing water and other nourishment to our top 750 people. Of course, I had to pull out some weeds too. In fact, General Electric had this policy. 10% of the workforce should be asked to leave each year. Boy, that made all the managers very careful about winning, so they wouldn't be one of the 10% who would be dropped. Is this a good policy? Are companies better off to scare their workforce, their managers, that their job is tentative depending on performance? He also believed in some of the tools of management, vision, mission, and planning. Leaders create a vision, they articulate the vision, they passionately own the vision, and relentlessly drive it to completion. So you know where you're going. And by the way, be number one or two in your market. Don't stay in a market where you're number 3, 4, or 5. You're not going to earn much money. Now, a lot of wise ideas, and everyone read the history of Jack Welch. They wanted to know what it takes to be a great manager. But here were some things that came out after he retired. Yes, the stock price rose every quarter, which was very impressive. But you know why it did? Here's what happened. This is a company that was making big equipment for railroads, and they make the big engines for airplanes, the engines for trains. So they were into big B2B businesses. But at the same time, he was making money in 2 other ways. The entertainment industry was catching his interest. And then also the financial industry, particularly the financial services that big companies need to borrow money. And he made money on their money. In other words, if you're going to buy an airplane engine, you have to raise a lot of money, and he would loan you the money and with high interest. The problem is that he drained the firm that depended on industrial businesses He drained and lost the strength, the leadership in the very businesses that made General Electric so great. They also found out that when he retired, the board of directors were so generous to him, they gave him about $43 million as a retirement, which he was making so much money without retiring. You don't give $43 million of your business to this guy. Not only that, they said he could use any airplane of General Electric free to go anywhere he wants while he's retired. So, and then the worst thing was that the people who were picked to run General Electric after he retired were 4 people who were very prominent in General Electric. Only one of them got the job. The other 3 got immediately jobs with other companies. And the other 3 practically ruined the 3 companies they went to. I mean, here's General Electric doing the best training of managers. And the 3 of the best managers who went to run Home Depot, Boeing aircraft, and so on, didn't do a good job running them when they left General Electric. Okay, let me move on. There are new voices in the talking about how businesses should be performed and run. And I want to talk about a few of these. And I'll do it in order. Larry Fink. Larry Fink is the CEO of a huge investment company called BlackRock Group, the BlackRock Group. In other words, Larry's on top of the idea of giving money to big new ideas. I suppose that Facebook must have, at the beginning, as it was growing, go to Larry Fink and say, we need more money to grow Facebook. Or Google would say, hey, Larry, would you lend us some money? So that's the kind of job. But he said such an interesting thing as a result of his experience with all these companies. He said, let me lower this so you can see a picture. He said, society is demanding that companies, both public and private, serve a social purpose. Now, that alone is not what normally is said by business. We are in the business of maximizing the rate of return to our shareholders who own the business, who lent us the capital. So this is very different. He says businesses should be serving a social purpose. To prosper over time, every company must not only deliver financial performance, but also show how it makes a positive contribution to society. You know, we can think of some of the companies that are run by managers and CEOs who really care too about the society. Just think of Starbucks. Howard Schultz, who runs Starbucks, he makes sure that his people who run he calls them baristas. All they're doing is making coffees of different kind, but they're baristas, the Italian word. And he makes sure they can go to college, and he will help out. He worries about cups because people get their coffee in cups, and the cups have to be put down, thrown away, and you can end up with mountains that have to be built of cups just to get rid of the cups. He's worried about the social responsibilities he has in running a coffee business, and so on and so forth. Unilever, and I'll say more about that. Levi Strauss, Nike, Body Shop, Patagonia, Ben and Jerry's are among other companies that are already take it for granted that they should show some social responsibility. But the question is that true of all big companies? No. There's a lot of big companies that are there to maximize the shareholders' wealth, and they don't think about social responsibility. How about Klaus Schwab? And what is he saying currently? He's the CEO of the World Economic Forum, which is operating all the time, but once every year has a huge conference with the top CEOs attending and speaking. Top, usually he gets the president or some top government officials to speak and some celebrities to speak and so on. So in their last meeting, 60 top business leaders were there, and they started to represent also the International Business Council, and they signed a commitment to ask businesses to be measured according to the stakeholder capitalism metrics, which are 21 universal disclosures that would be made by companies on how they are, as a company, impacting on people, planet, prosperity, and governance. So do you understand that here are some top businessmen at the World Economic Forum agreeing that companies ought to report on what their effect has been, their impact has been on social problems, and so on. And this is the ESG group. You know, ESG means that my company cares about its impact on environment, its impact on social and governance, and so on. Okay, that's another evidence of movement forward. Let's go on. Let's go to a third person, John McKay. McKay, he started originally a company that Whole Foods, and it's really a food business, but he wanted the foods to be carried, not be include junk foods and so on. He wanted to carry foods that were organically grown and healthy for people to eat, and became quite a very big chain called Whole Foods. But he also got involved in the movement called conscious capitalism. Now, before I mention the point made by conscious capitalism, there was an earlier book than that book called Firms of Endearment. And I hope all marketing students and all students in business read Firms of Endearment, especially the second edition, which it came out of a very simple idea. Observing that there are some companies that people are in love with. Now, we all observe that. Look at how, if you go into an Apple store, night and day, it is filled with people looking and playing with the Apple products, the iPhone, the iWatch, the iPro, and all that, iPad, iPod. I mean, we love Apple. In fact, they identified 25 companies that consumers loved. Now, what was the brilliant idea was to figure out what is special about these companies, and can other companies copy these companies? Because these 25 companies were outperforming their competitors 9-1 over a 10-year period. And if you walked into Apple or any other companies, their employees were happy and motivated. Their customers were happy and loyal. They were innovative as companies. They were profitable as companies, and they were environmentally concerned. So that led to the idea maybe these are companies led consciously in a way to improve on social problems. And basically there were 4 principles in conscious capitalism, and you ought to read the book. These are going to be companies that have a higher purpose than profits. Okay. They would have stakeholder driven, not shareholder driven, stakeholder driven. That is, being careful to reward all the people who made the business successful, employees, suppliers, communities, and so on. And that the leadership at the top, the CEO, would be following conscious leadership principles, and that they would spill over into all the employees and so on, and create a conscious culture of service principles that a company's there to serve the people, the customers. Okay, so that was a good set of ideas from both the book Firms of Endearment and Conscious Capitalism. Along comes Paul Polman, who runs Unilever for 10 years. He just recently retired. And he said, every company must define its purpose and its value proposition. And purpose is why it exists. In other words, what should I write as my purpose? Well, why you exist. Is it profit or is it something different? And then write your vision of where you want to end up, where the company should get to. And the mission is how to get there. So you got here purpose, vision, and mission. And another thing Paul Polman did was since he's stakeholder oriented, not just shareholder oriented, he had to define the stakeholders. My stakeholders at Unilever, and remember, we make soap and we make so many other products, but my stakeholders are my consumers and customers and business partners, who are mainly my employees, suppliers, my agencies. They help us get attention too, especially the ad agencies, the communities, the planet, and shareholders. He named 7 stakeholder groups. And you know what he said about the last one? Shareholders, they're last. Now, he meant by that is not that he doesn't care about shareholders, but that if he does serve the 6 groups just mentioned, serves them well, he'll make even more money for the shareholders. Isn't that interesting? The shareholders themselves should say, we like the way he runs Unilever because he's running it in a way that is producing more for even us. Okay. In fact, here's how he worded his mission. At the beginning, he says, I aim to double Unilever's growth, cut in half its environmental impact, and triple its social impact. And sure enough, sales rose from 38 billion to 60 billion during his management. And a billion's a lot of money, so that's a lot of billions, doubled practically the number of billions. And he said, I don't want to be interfered with by the press, which is going to tell us what we should be earning. So I'm eliminating quarterly share guidance and reports. And I'm going to hire people who have a higher purpose in life and want our company to deliver profitability plus sustainability plus social problem solution. And he made sure that each brand, maybe you've heard of these brands, Lifebuoy, Dove, Domestos, Ben & Jerry's, that each brand would have a brand purpose. Like, for example, Dove, which is a soap and skincare product, that Dove basically is about helping women feel beautiful. No matter how they look, they will feel self-esteem and beautiful. And they did a beautiful campaign. Ben & Jerry's makes terrific ice cream, but they give 10% of their profits away, and so on and so forth. So basically what we do is there's a 1-hour talk by Paul Polman on the internet, if you could hear it. He's talking without notes about how to run a business successfully. He's, in my mind, one of my heroes. And then we go on to the next person. This is quite a chart. I'm a friend of Mr. Yoshida. He is the ex-CEO of YKK. You know him in India. If you have any garment that uses a zipper, his zippers are the best zippers made in the world, and every country buys zippers from YKK. But YKK has expanded to also, they're very big in doors and windows for homes. Best doors and best windows for homes in Japan. And so on. And he has a philosophy which he calls the cycle of goodness. Now, if you look at this chart, I'm going to emphasize a few things. Let's consider the employees who work for YKK. Normally, the only earnings of an employee are the wages. Am I correct? We hire people and pay them wages. And that's shown. They get a salary, and they are also urged to have a savings plan as an employee. And they are urged to buy stock either in their company, YKK, or in another company, so that the worker is more of a businessman who gets a wage and plans his savings and earns money by owning stock in the company. Very important to try to get your workers to feel that they are an owner in your company. And then you'll notice that this means that the workers get dividends too, because they own some stock. And with the dividends and any retained profit, there will be expanding profit for the company too. The company itself pays out dividends and profit. And also the company pays out tax payments because it wants to support the government, and philanthropy. It's a very dedicated philanthropist that delivers money to social contributions. And the customers benefit by a steady cost reduction in making zippers. Therefore, prices of zippers go down, and a very big dedication to quality. This is that green chart in the middle. Quality improvement all the time, and increased product applications of zippers and buttons and other things, and doors and windows. And constant improvement of their equipment in making all these things. Do you understand why this is called a cycle of goodness? In other words, the goodness has to be shared. You're not just in business to make money for some people who gave you some capital. You're running the business to have a cycle of improving the lives of all the stakeholders. So I send that to you now. Now let's see. By the way, back to billionaires. And I cited some information about Indian billionaires. Almost every country has billionaires. Even Venezuela has one, and Zimbabwe has one, as poor as those countries are. The US has the largest number of billionaires, 624. China is second largest. By the way, India, I have to update the Indian number. As I showed you, 174. Those numbers are a little obsolete. And the world may have altogether 2,800 billionaires. It's more of a guess, because Forbes magazine does what it can to measure them, to identify them. But there are some royal people, there are dictators, there are mafias, there's criminals. So we don't know really the full extent. We do know the earnings of some of our top billionaires, like Jeff Bezos Jeff, who runs Amazon, is at 200 billion. By the way, he gave away money to his wife when they had a divorce, and he might have had more money if he hadn't done that. Bill Gates and others. Now, the interesting thing I'm raising is, for both the Indian billionaires and other billionaires, is this: the world needs a lot more money to put into education and health and child care of its people. Those sources of money are normally philanthropy and government. What are the responsibilities of business people, of the world billionaires? Well, this was a question that one of the great billionaires, Bill Gates, and Warren Buffett, another great billionaire, decided to try to answer. And I love their answer. And it's called the Giving Pledge. The Giving Pledge now has 214 people, billionaires, who've just said that they would essentially give away half of their money to good social causes in the next 10 years or something. I wish Bill and Warren could count 2,800 billionaires who have said they're joining the Giving Pledge. That would be marvelous. Because there's so much money in the hands of these people, and the governments, which are mostly government, is supposed to tax us and raise enough money to help make social problems reduced in size and severity. But the governments don't have the money. The business firms have the money. There are so many business firms. Do you know Facebook doesn't pay any taxes? Amazon does not pay any taxes. I don't know how they work out those legal maneuvers where our workers pay taxes, but not the companies. Some of these big companies. Well, you can be rest assured that Biden is working on that problem. Our president is working on that problem. So I'm just saying that billionaires may go the way of Carnegie. I hope they do. Remember why Carnegie? Carnegie, yes, kept the wages down and kept the unions destroyed so they can make a lot of money. But later on, he thought as he got older, he's got to give something back. And he did it with the brilliant idea of free libraries. I wish the billionaires could do this. Free health care everywhere. Free college education everywhere. Free child care. And then they too would not only be company leaders, but show great company responsibility. All right, I'm about to close, but what about, can we not finance a lot of this if we could only have more economic growth? Yes, we all believe in helping companies have more growth. And here are two views. The pessimists. Larry Sumner is he was the president of Harvard at one time, but he's a great economist. And he said for the US at least, I think growth probably is going to be slow in terms of aggregate GDP over the next 50 years. We call him a believer in, what is it called, stationarity, or that our economies won't grow very much. Not like China's growth. You may have known that China just reported a 16% growth in its GDP, annual GDP. But Larry is a pessimist. The Nobel Prize economist Robert Solow worried that companies will continue to hoard cash and to pay their own managers more, and that interest rates will remain low. And then one of our own economists, who's very well regarded, also showed 6 factors why our growth may be slow. On the other hand, here's a guy named Peter Diamandis. He's a very important guy. He founded the X Prize. Let me explain what the X Prize is. I think $1 million given to anyone who does a great, successful new idea that benefits everyone in the world. It's like if someone cured cancer, they get the X Prize. Wonderful idea. And then he built a new university called Singularity University. And at Singularity, I remember having an Indian friend of mine, Walter Vieira, and others talk about this university. Uh, you, it's all about the future. It's to find out the point where man and machine can work together. Instead of us ending up eventually being run by robots, we are partners with um, our artificial intelligence people and so on, actors and so on. And his book is called Abundance. We will soon be able to meet and exceed the basic needs of every man, woman, and child in the planet. Abundance is for all is within our grasp. So here's the pessimist and here's the optimist. Each attitude, interestingly, will lead to self-fulfilling outcomes. In other words, by pessimists refraining from doing things that could produce economic growth, we will have slower economic growth if we are all run by pessimists. If optimists run the business, they will encourage innovation, investment, entrepreneurship, and produce greater economic growth. So I believe that for society, optimism beats pessimism if we can have it. And here's what I say to the business community and what will make your firm grow. Within 5 years, if you're in the same business you are in now, you're going to be out of business. In other words, business growth depends on two things: innovation and marketing. If you have expertise in both of those ideas and functions, your business will grow. So good luck in India and elsewhere to building better company performance and showing greater company responsibility. Thank you so much. Bye.